blockchain's promising and crypto is exciting, but how do we actually make this into something that really can change the world? Where is the actual use case for blockchain in the financial industry? How does it actually impact the financial markets? And so I think that with security tokens, we really are starting to see that. People want access to some of these exciting alternative investments. Advantages of launching a security token are tremendous and are much in terms of managing your cap table, in terms of managing your investors, in terms of providing liquidity. A lot of these things are tremendously easier with a security token.
Hello everyone, welcome to another issue of Stobox Interviews, where we bring industry professionals and rock stars to discuss the future of tokenization, crypto, crowdfunding, and finance in general. My name is Ross, I am co-founder and chief operating officer at Stobox. And we are welcoming our guest, Kyle Sonlin. Kyle is CEO at Security Token Market, provider of the most up-to-date data on the prices of security tokens traded on the secondary market, recent tokenization deals, and industry news. Also, you can check my interview for Security Token Market industry reviews in the description of this video. Kyle, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk security tokens and excited to dig into some of the fun regulation pieces and trading markets and all that good stuff. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Please tell us about yourself and your currently company activities.
Absolutely. So my background is as a trader. My background is in wealth management. So I spent a lot of time before getting into the crypto and blockchain industry, analyzing tech stocks and understanding how the business model for a lot of these companies works. And especially I find it very fascinating that many of them were pre-revenue and trading at crazy valuations. And so I enjoyed understanding how those markets worked and what those businesses were doing. And so I quickly moved into the crypto and blockchain industry as, from an investment perspective, there was a fantastic opportunity there, but also as a technologist and as an entrepreneur myself, I loved the idea of working in the cutting edge of technology. And so I kind of combined those two ideas together in working in security tokens, which really takes this idea of leveraging blockchain technology to optimize the traditional financial markets by providing that accountability and through a distributed ledger to the trading of assets around the world, which opens up opportunities for new types of assets to be traded, just like we trade any other type of investment, as well as opening up opportunities for investors around the world to have access to deals and to assets they traditionally would not be able to invest in. And so I think that those two different things really are fascinating for opportunity and something that really got me excited about security tokens. So back in 2016, 17, as I was really starting to get into the blockchain scene and I was, again, very familiar from an investing perspective, but around that time, we, along with my co-founder, Herwig, launched Security Token Group. We started with a consulting business, Security Token Advisors, where we help people understand and leverage blockchain-based solutions for their companies, or in terms of sometimes working with financial services providers and others in the industry to understand how tokenization can impact their industry and their current business model. Then we launched Security Token Market, which is where I spend most of my time today. That's about aggregating the financial trading data around the world, collecting that into one place, and then making reports and analysis on it, understanding that whole scene, and then launching media platform around that information to help drive adoption organically around the world. And so I got involved in that, and we've been doing that now for multiple years through tracking all the markets, through posting about all this information, through our podcast and a few other these different media platforms. And I love what I do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a detailed answer. It is great that you have experience from traditional and crypto space. It is like a fusion.
Yeah, totally. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how that works. And I mean, I think that's the exciting part, is that we're really trying to figure out, okay, blockchain's promising and crypto is exciting, but how do we actually make this into something that really can change the world? Where is the actual use case for blockchain in the financial industry? How does it actually impact the financial markets? And so I think that with security tokens, we really are starting to see that.
Yeah, powerful. Currently, we see a big hype around the crypto industry in general, and more companies and public investors searching all around blockchain. So from your perspective, is there demand for tokenization? So is it increasing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's increasing. I think that we see demand from a couple different perspectives. Certainly from an issuer perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? When you have
Right.
small businesses that don't have access to capital or traditionally would be having to go to a bank and getting really bad terms on a loan or something along those lines, or if you are a real estate issuer or something that you're looking to raise capital for your property, traditional HELOC systems aren't always accessible for people. And so creating a security token offering to be able to raise that capital while still maintaining your operations is something incredibly valuable. And then we've seen it from the investment perspective, from investors that are looking to participate. From the security token perspective, we've got a few different buckets of what kinds of assets are being traded. The first bucket would be through I would say the institutional products that have been created by Overstock and T0. So Overstock's a publicly traded company. They issued shares of their public company as a security token on the blockchain. T0 also did the same, and they've done very, very strong volume from a liquidity perspective on their exchange. But then we also have much more retail focused products. So there's some real estate properties where there's a real estate issuer called Realty who owns a real estate property that pays anywhere from 10 to 15% in rental dividends each year. And they're actually able to fractionalize the shares of those homes and open up that opportunity to investors around the world to be able to invest into US real estate and still receive on top of the equity appreciation of that asset, actually see 10 to 15% paid out in stablecoin in dividends. That's a high yield generating asset and a traditional asset that is in a lot of ways more stable in terms of US real estate. So I think that there's a lot of demand from that side. That's from, those are actually traded on Uniswap. So we see a lot of this DeFi, all these DeFi mechanics that are kind of being applied into the security token industry. And that's definitely more of a retail focused investment product versus we also have some of these more institutional products that are either trading like in the Overstock or T0 example, or we see a lot of institutional banks getting involved in tokenizing their portfolios from a private market perspective, just to capitalize on the efficiencies of managing their cap table, of programmatically upgrading compliance, and really offering a lot of these management solutions that the blockchain provides through smart contract integration of the KYC and of the ownership and cap table. So I think that there's demand on a lot of different fronts, and we're really kind of just trying to piece that all together and help really scale that operation from here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. From our experience, from our perspective, we are getting more and more clients, companies who are interested in tokenization because they are affected from COVID-19, for example, and it fits best for real estate companies who don't have access to make some flights, yes, to another countries, and they looking to shift completely online in online space and issue their securities, make it tradable, and attract more capital and more funds for their business.
Right.
You mentioned a very interesting topic regarding secondary markets, because secondary markets for securities tokens are emerging, but liquidity is limited, and how the secondary markets will evolve.
So yeah, you mentioned two interesting points there, right? We've got secondary markets, and then we have this idea around liquidity.
Yep.
And these are really two very different things that I think oftentimes people tend to put together as one piece, right? And so just because an asset can be traded on a secondary market does not mean that it will be traded on a secondary market, right? And I think that that's kind of where you're going with it. And so with secondary markets, it's a tough piece because when we're talking about security tokens, we're talking about regulated securities. And that means that there are governing bodies that determine what can invest in these things. Also, they determine who can and cannot trade these things. And so it's a little bit more structured, there's more friction involved in creating a security token exchange or marketplace than if you were to just create a crypto exchange or marketplace. And that's intentional to make sure that we're doing this the right way. And so with the security token marketplaces, we've seen here in the US, especially in 2020, a tremendous amount of approvals for this
Mhm.
license. We also see
Yep.
the same thing in Europe with MTF licenses being approved at a much higher rate than they have been in the years past, especially again for blockchain-based settlement and for digital securities and security tokens. So we've seen that a lot in Europe as well as the US here, and especially in Singapore. There have been the MTA and many of these other regulatory bodies have been very supportive of working with secondary markets to help create this opportunity for brokers to be able to provide the secondary market. And so that's very, very exciting because we need those platforms to be able to actually provide any sort of liquidity at all, right? In order to just be able to trade. Then liquidity itself, in terms of getting people excited about trading these things, as a whole nother beast in and of itself. And we see a lot of different ways that marketplaces have tried to inspire that, right? And so with a very institutional exchange like T0, which represents about 75% of the trading market cap, as well as about 75% of the trading volume of the security token industry right now, we see they've taken the approach of working in a very, traditional manner, which means that they're onboarding broker-dealer subscribers so that additional brokers can bring their platform and their investor network onto the T0 platform. But then there are examples of marketplaces and ATSs working with market makers to be able to inspire this trading, and help provide some of that liquidity for each of these different assets. And also we see examples of decentralized exchanges like Uniswap that have their own market making models that incentivize investors or small-time investors to actually stake the assets that they own in order to provide more liquidity for the system in exchange for getting some of those trading fees. So there's all kinds of ways that you can create liquidity through kind of that base layer. But really what liquidity comes down to is creating exciting assets that people actually want to buy. And if people want to buy and hold these assets, there's going to be a demand that's established. So creating interesting assets, especially in security tokens, where we're talking about real world assets. We're talking about real investments in exciting companies. We're talking about equities. We're talking about real estate products. We're talking about, fancy cars, right? The sports cars that Curio Invest is tokenizing. People want access to some of these exciting alternative investments. And the more that we can create high quality, good structured products, I think that you're going to see much more liquidity than if we were to be creating, kind of some of these shit coins, if you will, that we've seen sometimes in the crypto industry. That of course, nobody wants to buy some of these things when they're not interesting and they don't really have a plan to make any money or really to be a strong investment. So it's about not only creating that right infrastructure from the secondary market perspective, but also to focus on the asset level and make sure that we're creating things that people want, as well as, again, from an investor relations perspective, communicating that clearly. So communicating to your investors, here's what we're up to, here's how we're performing, here's how the company's doing. There's no standard for the disclosure requirements for a security token. You don't need to be audited. You don't need to do quarterly reporting and some of these things. But the more disclosures that you can make, like for example with Aspen Coin, which is the St. Regis Aspen Hotel, they've tokenized their trading on secondary markets, and they've done a fantastic job of disclosing a lot of the company's operations, how it's performing, what their projections are. And I think that provides a lot of investor confidence in an asset to be able to feel a little bit more confident in being able to pull that trigger. And therefore, with more investor confidence, more investor activity, now you're talking about more liquidity as a whole.
Yeah, thank you for your insightful reply. We at Stobox, we developed our technical solution built on top of Ethereum infrastructure for primary issuing. And based on our communication with clients, we're often facing with questions about liquidity and secondary market. And that's why we are currently developing a digital security swap for the clients of our dashboard for primary issuing on top of Uniswap. So we see that more and more companies shifting from centralized directions to decentralized because they have their options to pay for the listings for INX or for Archax, to make the possibility for their securities to be tradable for existing investors and for new potential investors, or they have the option to create the liquidity pool only for whitelisted investors who have already passed KYC and participate in the offering, and provide to them the solution to make some trades of buying or selling their shares only for the existing investors.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think that's definitely addressing some of the structural problems. And looking back over the years now of security tokens, the structure piece has always been incredibly difficult, right? Establishing the infrastructure needed to actually trade these things. And I think that what you guys are doing in terms of providing that L2 support from a blockchain perspective is fantastic. And then again, from the liquidity piece, it's getting a new investor to invest in your project is just like getting a new user to buy your product. They're unlikely to find it on their own. You need to make sure that you're actively trying to acquire new users. And in the same way, you need to make sure that new investors are aware of your investment product and what you're doing in your company before they're really going to jump in on that. So I think that there's kind of those two pieces, and together can really create a strong and healthy market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree with you. So Kyle, I wonder from your perspective, how many of the STOs are successful? Is the percentage increasing or decreasing in the last year? What differentiates successful STO from failed, and what are the successful factors?
That's a great question. I definitely think that we're seeing it increasing, and probably the main reason why, certainly there's a myriad of factors that come into play here. But the reality is it's still a growing industry. I think the market cap for trading security tokens is somewhere in the range of around 700 million US dollars, which is fantastic. And that's about I think it's nearly a 11 or 12 times growth from where we were just 12 months ago. So things are growing fantastic, but it's still incredibly small from the context of the financial industry. 700 million is tiny. So
comparing to traditional
exactly, compared to any traditional market, or even compared to crypto, it's tiny, right? So we're still getting there. I really think is good, and a narrative that we're finally moving away from is, I think this idea that just because you're doing a security token, that there's going to be more people that want to invest just because it's a token. And while I think that the advantages of launching a security token are tremendous and are much in terms of managing your cap table, in terms of managing your investors, in terms of providing liquidity, a lot of these things are tremendously easier with a security token. But the reality is that the underlying asset is what drives the investment, not the structure of the vehicle that an investor would participate in. And so I think that we're seeing a tremendously larger percentage of successful security tokens because a lot of the issuers are now focusing more on raising their money through as a company that is just doing a security token offering instead of, trying to make the security token of the blockchain the main highlight of the money that they're trying to raise. And so I think that because of that, we've seen a growth in, again, some of these exciting use cases like real estate and like equities, like venture capital funds, like a lot of these exciting things, as well as many totally unique use cases that are being under development now through NFTs and through art and through a lot of these just other vehicles that are really the industry is starting to find its footing, that in a way that I think we've really struggled to develop over the last couple of years. And so with that, I certainly think the percentage is increasing, but also the amount of people looking to launch are increasing as well. So we're seeing, many, many more security token offerings than we ever had in years past, which is very exciting for the future.
Yeah, and based on our research in the last year, we see different STOs from Asia, from US, and from Europe. And we think in Stobox that this year, 2021, will be very successful for the STOs, because in STO space, we see more and more traction, more and more digital securities providers is for the technical solutions, and the demand from the businesses due the COVID-19, for example. And one of the biggest challenges for STO project is to find their target audience. So who are usually the investors in STO, and how did it change over years?
So we definitely have seen from a retail perspective that there's a lot of international investors that are looking to get access to whether it's US equities or US real estate that they traditionally have been shut out from. I know that traditional financial markets it seems so weird to me that we still have stock markets that are regionalized, that, like there's a US stock market, there's a London stock exchange, then the Deutsche Börse in Germany, and then, all of them around the world. Like, in today's day and age, it doesn't matter whether you log on to whatever website. It shouldn't, if you can go buy Coca-Cola in your local, gas station, you should be able to buy Coca-Cola stock. And I'm sure Coca-Cola would like to open up their investment vehicle to anyone around the world. And I'm sure most people around the world would want access to that. And so, what we've seen is kind of this opening of opportunity for investment for people around the world, not only from international investors investing in the US, but the other way around. US investors that are looking to participate in emerging markets that we would traditionally not have access to. And so I just think that international investment into new places is really where a huge demand for security tokens lies, where national investors are looking to get exposed to something outside of their local jurisdiction. And security tokens provide that opportunity by kind of creating a global investment market and ecosystem. And so that's really where I think that there's a ton of demand. Again, real estate seems to be where the largest demand is at first, which is something that I think a lot of people in the security token industry are not surprised by. We looked at real estate as one of the most illiquid assets and one of the largest asset markets in the world. So naturally, security tokens provide a great vehicle and resource for real estate to be able to grow more effectively. And so that certainly has been the case so far.
Yeah, from my perspective, when we talk about retail investors and the target audience of STO investors, it is the fusion of crypto investors with more traditional mind. Because when we talk about securities, we talk always about the lockup period, for example, in 12 months. And investor need to operate in Ethereum infrastructure because I think the 80% of all STO providers based on Ethereum, and it means that investors need to navigate in Ethereum infrastructure to store the private key, to create a wallet, to store the securities. And it is a fusion of traditional investors in crypto space.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way to look at it because, again, many crypto investors understand the blockchain, understand some of these terms and the themes that are going on here. So certainly they're going to be a target. But what we've seen, as you're mentioning, is that a lot of crypto investors really do enjoy kind of the gambling aspect of crypto in terms of hitting a moonshot and 100xing their capital or going straight to zero. And so with a security token, you're unlikely to see those exact same market dynamics. That being said, we see in the traditional stock market that things can definitely go crazy at any given time. But I think when you're looking for an investor that potentially wants to take some of their crypto and go somewhere else that still is blockchain focused or still is exciting, still is a burgeoning industry, but potentially has a little bit more of a fundamental value to provide a little bit of a floor or for their investment that sometimes crypto can't really provide.
Currently, there are many STO providers on the market, so the industry is very crowded. How can STO provider differentiate themselves and find a separate niche?
That's a great question. I think you maybe touched on it there just at the very end, and that's really to be specified and to figure out exactly what the security token issuer might need, right? I think that what we started from the beginning was that, from an issuance perspective, a lot of security token issuance platforms wanted to provide a one-size-fits-all service for any type of security token issuer. And while that is a great idea in theory, the reality is that different assets require very different needs. And so creating kind of a solution that specifically targets an asset class that's interesting or that's underserved in the industry is certainly a way to differentiate from the traditional solutions. And then there's, the reality is that the financial services world is so large. There's so many different companies in the industry that you really need to start to look at what is currently being underserved. When we launched, security token market, the reality was there were issuance platforms and brokers that were trying to raise capital for these offerings, but there was really no information and no platform that collected any research on the security token deals. So we found that the industry was lacking information, lacking transparency on how these things were performing, and not only performing, but just what they even were. And so we launched Security Token Market to help provide some of that information and create a global repository for that trading data and those trading tokens. And that just came organically as we took a look at, okay, let's look at the traditional financial system and what's currently not being provided in the markets. And that was certainly one of those pieces that was very much needed in the space. And so for STO providers, I think that's how it is. The reality is that it's still such a small industry that while it is crowded and competitive, I think that one strong client can change pretty much anything. So with an STO provider that's looking to differentiate themselves, the real goal I think should be trying to close a client and focusing your time on creating a service around a specific type of industry and bringing something to market and working with, again, the right partners. We have a consulting company that works alongside issuance platforms and brokers and any of these different pieces. So we help kind of connect the dots as well. And so if any issuer is looking for that kind of a thing and figuring out how to develop their business or looking how to work with clients or provide the best services for clients, we can work alongside you through security token advisors and help you understand exactly where the industry is going and what partners to work with and how to develop that opportunity.
Yeah, great that you share information and educate market about tokenization. It is something similar what we do because we are also very actively in the marketing space. We are providing the analytical content for tier one medias to educate public investors and businesses what tokenization is. And also we are issuing a book in collaboration with Malta Digital Innovation Authority about how you can make a STO in a proper way. Also, we are currently cooperating with finance authorities, such as the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, to educate and help government to build their blockchain laws and to attract capital from around the world and be attractive from jurisdiction perspective.
Cool. Yeah, that's needed. That's needed. More resources, the better, and helping drive the industry forward from every different angle. I think that the opportunity of security tokens to link the entire world together is something incredibly exciting, but it's definitely a battle that's fought on multiple fronts, right? Developing the industry here in the US, where I'm located in Miami, Florida, versus working with firms in Asia like iStocks that have done great work. The MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, in growing their exchange over there and all the work that firms like them and Signum and others have done in Singapore. Then moving into Europe with Switzerland has been a big leader, as well as Liechtenstein and many of the other different countries that you referenced and others that have been doing a great work on this. We're all kind of building this together. As long as we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, it's an exciting thing to think about where we're going to be in just a short time.
Yeah, we are working on an interesting financial engineering concept, personal securities. So when people tokenizing themselves, what do you think are other opportunities for financial innovations and creativity that blockchain technology opens, or which industry can benefit generally from tokenization?
It's interesting from a creative perspective. One use case that I'm incredibly excited about is intellectual property. So like for artists or movies to be able to raise capital on the intellectual property and then have investors be able to see the gains on the outset. If you're talking about a movie, right, you're raising capital for the movie up front to make the production, and then the box office sales speak for themselves and investors get that return. Or if you're a musical artist and you're looking to raise capital on your tour, you're about to do a 30-city tour for new album, being able to raise capital up front to be able to give you that financial security and that a little bit of insurance in case something goes wrong, and then being able to do your full tour, investors being able to invest in their artist as they perform and really be financially tied to that artist, or whether it's through tours, whether it's through through raising money to make an album, to pay for studio time and all of those different pieces, as well as we saw some examples of athletes being able to tokenize their contracts and being able to get money up front in exchange for future value later down the line. I think that intellectual property and a lot of these it's all kind of tied together, as you mentioned, because personal tokens is not that far off from what I just mentioned in terms of someone selling shares of their future earnings and being able to capitalize on that now, using that capital to get closer and closer to those future goals. I think is something fantastic and something very, very exciting for the future.
Yeah, also we see the increasing of NFT industry, yeah, and IP rights could represent or stored in NFTs as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, the divide between NFTs and security tokens. They are both asset-backed tokens, but I think that there's definitely still a fine line between whether it's technically a commodity or whether it becomes an investment contract. And so those are some of those fun nuances that we discussed on our podcast. Actually, the new episode came out today or yesterday, and we talked very much about that exact same thing of figuring out, okay, NFTs and security tokens, how do they work together? How do they fit? And what's the difference? And so, especially right now, NFTs are blowing up. It's an incredibly hot industry. And I think that it's certainly one that's here to stay.
Yeah, currently we are developed our technical solution for primary issuing. Okay, we're currently developing this solution for the secondary market, as well as we have our security token of our US company, and also we have our utility token of our ecosystem, loyalty token, which will be used in our future crypto exchange. And also currently we are issuing our merchandise in form of a unique NFT where people can buy it and have a right to claim it in a physical form.
Nice. That's fascinating. That's an interesting concept that I think that you're actually on the cutting edge of. I'm not super familiar with a lot of NFTs that actually have the redemption rights of the physical good, which is a really cool concept and interesting.
Yeah, great. So Kyle, thank you for your insightful interview, for insightful answers. It was a really pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks so much, Ross. I appreciate you having me on. And now we've both interviewed each other. You've done it on video. We did it on the written. Maybe we'll have to figure out how to do another one in the future. And I appreciate you having me on. If anybody has any questions for me, I think probably the easiest way to reach out to me would be through, I really respond on Twitter at Kyle Sonlin. You can find me there. Reach out, send me a message or something like that. And I'll definitely do my best to get back to you. Happy to talk about anything security tokens, blockchain, answer questions, comments, or whatever you want to do there. So definitely hit me up.
Yeah, we will leave your contacts in the description of this video, so every viewer can reach out to you.
Perfect. That's awesome. And I look forward to talking soon, Ross.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle.